Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope all my students are okay. That's fine. Well, today is our session number 9 and we are in the 5th week of our study in this semester. But before I talk about today's session and what we are going to discuss and understand in today's session, it's very important that we have to recall what we've done in the previous session. I hope all we are engaged in understanding the classification of consonants, and I think all of you by now understand that we can classify consonants on the basis of 3 aspects, and they are voicing, place of articulation, and manner of articulation. Absolutely right. We try to understand in detail what is voicing, and then we try to understand what is place of articulation, and in the previous session we try to understand theoretically what is manner of articulation. Is it so? Alright, so I also told you please try to connect each and every session. Whatever we do in the previous session, that is connected, and definitely we have to understand whatever the current session is, but at the same time that is the session which is connected with the previous one, and of course the coming one. Same is the case with the slides. When I ask you that please focus on slides, that means you have to focus on each and every slide. It's very important because at the end of each session, my dear students, there is self-assessment component. That's why when we just keep on focusing on each and every slide, then we can understand. And then what is the final thing that we have to connect what we've done previously. Okay, I hope that before listening to me, all right, you've got the time. Since you have got time and space at home, that you can just go and understand what we've done in the previous session or sessions. Okay, well dear students, today is our session number 9, and now we are in the 5th week. This is the 5th week of our semester, session number 9, week number 5. Our today's topic is primarily, first of all, to try to understand what are English consonants. But remember, with reference to manner of articulation, that means our primary concern today is manner of articulation, and we have to understand the consonants of English. Why I'm using English? As I told you, of course, in the previous session, and not only the previous session, throughout the sessions I've been talking about English. Why? Because we must have some sort of model. Of course, when we talk about phonetics, that doesn't mean that we are particularly talking about English. We are talking about any language, since we are engaged to understand what is phonetics. But specifically, I do talk about English. Why? Because we must have some sort of model before us, and the model before us is English. So definitely we'll be talking about phonetics, of course, the consonants of English with reference to manner of articulation. So that is our primary focus today. Okay? When I say understanding consonants of English, and when I talk about manner of articulation, remember there is only one slide you have in front of you now, but there's a complete world behind this slide, and definitely that world we'll see after this slide. It's written, let's understand nasals, stops, of course plosives, fricatives, affricates, approximants, and lateral. These are the classes, in fact, of consonants. We try to understand such names when we were talking about manner of articulation theoretically, and at the same time I presented before you some of the examples during the previous session. Today we have to understand each and every class in detail. Okay, my dear students, the first class we come across is the nasal. The nasals you can call. First of all, I like to read the statements for you, and then we should try to understand through analysis. It says, nasal consonants are created when you completely block airflow through your mouth and let the air pass through your nose. I repeat, nasal consonants are created when you completely block airflow through your mouth and let the air pass through your nose. So that means we are going to block airflow. Where? Through what? Yes, exactly, through our mouth. And at the same time, when the air is blocked, but it really needs to go out. Now, the air has to pass through some sort of cavity. Now, what is the cavity available now when mouth is absolutely blocked? Yes, exactly. Nose is available. That means nasal cavity is available. And through the nostrils, we just produce, or we allow the air go outside. That's why these consonants which are produced through the nasal cavity are known as nasal sounds. I would like to read it again so that you may understand. When I'm reading out this statement, it is very important that you must try to think what I am saying. Nasal consonants are created when you completely block airflow through your mouth and let the air pass through your nose. Nasal consonants are created when you completely block airflow through your mouth and let the air pass through your nose. So that means some sort of speech organ inside our mouth is blocking the air. And I hope you remember, time and again I told you, the different speech organs, they play different role. At this time what happened, yes, velum part of the soft palate is in fact playing the major role. It is not allowing the air to pass or to go to oral cavity. During the 8th session I told you that we have got two cavities available. Yes, exactly, where the air stream is pushed upward and sent to where? Vocal folds. The first processor, what happens, that is the place where naturally the speaker determines that what kind of sound I am to produce. This time, for example, I am talking to you, and naturally, as I told you, for example, a couple of sessions before, when I presented before you the entire mechanism of speech production. Yes, exactly, the brain cells all the time giving directions. Yes, exactly. That's wonderful that you can recall now. Now what happens exactly, two cavities are available. One is the oral cavity and the second one is the nasal cavity. Now this time what happened, the oral cavity is blocked by velum. Definitely it is allowing the airflow, alright, to have its way through the nostril. And what happens, three sounds are produced. As I told you time and again, there are three sounds available which are called nasal sounds. And it is very much written over here, the three nasal sounds are in English. Okay? Now, what is the first one? The first one is M. Let's try to understand two words which are in front of you. The first one is mad. The second one is calm. Now, oral passage is blocked by closing the lips. When you are producing the sound M, you can feel that both lips are together and there is no air at all. Now what happens, the airflow needs to go out somewhere. And as I told you, here is the point when velum, the soft palate, is playing its role. It has blocked the airflow to go to oral cavity, and that's why the airflow is now going towards nasal cavity. And the sound produced is M, mad, and it is bilabial sound at the same time. I told you, I presented before you a complete table. So, on the basis of what? Class, and then what are the articulators involved? That makes a sound bilabial, alveolar or velar, or labiodental or dental. Or if the structure involved, alright, do you remember? Yes, exactly. Now, M is bilabial. You can understand while producing M sound in the words of mad and calm. You can feel your Air needs some sort of outlet, and there is no outlet except nasal cavity, because oral passage is blocked by the lips. M. Then the second sound is N. No. Man. Again, oral passage is blocked by pressing tongue tip against the alveolar ridge. N. You can feel your tongue is touching what place? Yes, exactly, alveolar ridge. And it is not touching the softer part, but it is touching the harder part, hard palate. Oral passage is blocked by pressing tongue tip against the alveolar ridge. N. And when you talk about the third sound, that is the ing sound, ing, going, sing. Now, oral passage is blocked by pressing the back of your tongue against the soft palate. Now think about the tongue part. As I told you, our tongue has got 4 parts at least. It has 4 parts. Tip is there, front is there, center is there, and back is there. Now this time, back of the tongue is playing its role. Yes, exactly. What part? The back of the tongue. Oral passage is blocked by pressing the back of your tongue against the soft palate, and that's why ing is called the vowel sound. Vowel. But the top category is nasal, because this sound is produced through the nasal cavity. No oral cavity is involved over here, but nasal cavity. So these 3 sounds, m, n, and ing, these are nasals. These are nasals. Why? Because of the way we produce. The way we produce. Is it clear? Okay. Now, whatever you have heard, I want you to now see the demonstration. This is the way the nasal sounds are produced. Can you see it? You can, while seeing this slide and concentrating on this slide, I want you to produce the sound m, n, ing. You can understand, for example, air is pushed upwards by the lungs, and what happens? You can see the vocal folds. Can you see them? Yes, exactly, the black brackets. You can see it. And now watch. The airflow is trying to go to where? To oral cavity, but something is blocking. Sometimes what happens, if it is m, which is a bilabial sound, what happens? M. 2 lips, they don't allow the airflow to come to this area. If this is n, what happens? The tip of the tongue goes somewhere to touch the alveolar ridge. And if it is ing, what happens? The soft palate, it starts playing its role. And you can see, while the production of these sounds, nasal cavity is free, and we are throwing the air through the nostrils. Can you see this? Very good. You can concentrate. You can see the red arrows. What are they doing? They are guiding, in fact that what happens when we produce the nasal sounds. All right? That's pretty good that now you understand them. This is the time to understand the stops, the plosives. Plosives. I want you to read the statement first of all. Like nasal consonants, stop consonants occur when the vocal tract is closed completely. Now this is the line you must never forget. Like nasal consonants, stop consonants occur when the vocal tract is completely closed or closed completely. So this is what we have to understand. Again, the airflow is stopped, it is blocked. It's very important. It's very important to understand this. But for stops, the airflow is not redirected through the nose. Now, what's the difference between nasal sound and stops? This is what you have to remember. We are saying that like nasal consonants, stop consonants occur when the vocal tract is closed completely. Now that doesn't mean that vocal tract is closed completely and that means that all right, this time we are again using nasal cavity. Not at all. Not at all. But remember, for stops, the airflow is not redirected through the nose. No, the soft palate is not playing its role to stop the air to go to oral cavity and allow the air to go through nasal cavity. Not at all. No, no redirection. Instead, the air quickly builds up pressure behind the articulators and then releases in a burst. There is a pressure behind the articulators. What are the articulators, for example? May I say lips? For example, if I say P, so both lips have stopped the airflow. So this is what I'm trying to make you understand, that not like nasals. So airflow doesn't use the nasal cavity channel. Rather, it does use the oral cavity channel. But what happens? Yes, exactly. The airflow is stopped. And there is a pressure behind the articulators and then releases in a burst. We will see what are the stops in the next slide. But this is what you have to understand, that all right, nasal sounds, clear, that nasal cavity is used. But when we talk about stops, that doesn't mean that we are allowing the airflow to use the same channel, that is nasal cavity, not at all. But here, this time what happens? Only the articulators, for example, for the time being, may I say, the lips, they're not allowing the airflow go out, but yes, it allows the sound to build up a pressure behind the articulator. And then there is a release of airflow in a burst. All right? Now let's look at the stops of the plosives. As I told you in the previous slide, all right, there is difference between nasal sounds and stops. What is the difference? I have already told you. The nasal sounds are produced through the use of nasal cavity, of course, but it is not the case with the stops. We have to use a different cavity, and that is known as oral cavity. But what happens? There is a pressure that is built, in fact, by the airflow behind the articulators, and of course when the airflow it goes out, there is a release with a burst. Now look at the list of the stops. You have got 6 stops of plosive sound in front of you. We shall try to learn, we shall try to understand, and we shall try to understand them how? Through examples. Let's try to understand the plosives, which are also called stops or plosive, both are the same. The first sound is P. P. The words are purse, wrap. When we produce purse and wrap, what happens? Oral passage is blocked by closing the lips. Yes, oral passage is blocked by closing the lips. Say the words again. Purse, wrap. Please don't call this word as purse. It is not purse. Purse, wrap. Can you feel some sort of burst when you produce the sound P? Yes, exactly. Purse, wrap. The next sound is B. B. Let's try to understand the sound B with the help of these 2 words. back, cab. Now what happens when we produce back and cab? Oral passage is blocked by closing the lips, and again this is a bilabial sound. Okay, bilabial sound. Back, cab. You can use some more words, not necessarily these words, but you can make a list of those words having bilabial sound, starting with b, or maybe it is in the beginning or at the end of the word, but at least we have to understand what is a stop. All right. Our third sound is t. Let's understand this sound with the help of these two words. Tab, rat, tab, rat. Now what happens when we are producing t sound? Oral passage is blocked by pressing the tongue tip against the alveolar ridge. And that's why it is known as alveolar sound. This is what I told you during the previous sessions. T, tap, rat. The oral passage is blocked by pressing the tongue tip against the alveolar ridge. Okay? Our next sound is d. What are the words which can help us to understand this sound? Dip, bad, dip, bad. Now what happens? Again you can see oral passage is blocked by pressing the tongue tip against the alveolar ridge. So both these sounds are alveolar sound at the same time, and we call them stops, as p and b are bilabial. Okay? So p, b, t, d. Now next sound is k. K. And what are the words which can help us now to understand this sound? Kite, back. Don't produce this sound as kite. It's kite. G, I, T, t. Kite. Back. So what happens when we are producing k sound? Block airflow with the back of the tongue against the soft palate. You can feel it when you produce the sound k. Soft palate is blocking the air. The airflow is blocked at that spot, at that point. So that's why we are capable of producing k sound. And this is also known as vela. Our next sound, which is the last plosive, is also vela. What happened? G, g, good, bug, good, bug. Again, the same thing. Block airflow with the back of the tongue against the soft palate. So these are the 6 plosives. You can also call them stops. P, b, t, d, k, g. If there is a question on you that can you tell us what are the plosives in English, or what are the plosive English consonants? So the answer is p, b, t, d, k, g. And again you can tell the class at the same time. So first 2 are bilabial, the next 2 are, yes, alveolar, and the next 2 are velar. Absolutely right. Let's see what happens when we produce plosives. Can you see now in this diagram and in this demonstration? Can you see the soft palate? Can you see the use of your lips? When we use the sound p, what happens? Then b, then t, then d, then k, then g. If it's bilabial sound, what happens? The roll of lips, that's very important, isn't it? Now this is what you can understand. This is the demonstration, in fact, for all the students to understand that what happens when we are using plosives. Yes, as a young scientist who is very much interested to know about the world of phonetics, I think this is very important. And I'm sure after having this sort of demonstrations, you are capable of understanding the production of speech sound, especially the manner of articulation and the point of articulation. I told you that you cannot separate any basis, any base or any aspect, since we are classifying the consonants on the basis of three bases. The three aspects are there. One is the voicing, the other is the place of articulation, and the third one is the manner of articulation. Now this time we are engaged to understand the consonants of English, but with reference to manner of articulation. Now this time, after having seen what happened when we produce nasal sounds, okay, the nasal cavity is very much active. But this time oral cavity is too much active, but with the help of some other speech organs. Sometimes the lips, sometimes the soft palate, isn't it? And sometimes the tongue is in fact just blocking the airflow. Now this is what we call that is the procedure of the production of plosives English consonants. All right. After stops, we have to understand what are the fricative sounds. The fricative. Let's read first of all, what are they? While nasal and stop consonants involve a complete blockage of the vocal tract, fricative sounds involve only a partial blockage of the vocal tract, so that air has to be forced through a narrow channel. That's very important to understand. We were trying to understand what is the procedure, what is the manner of articulation for the production of nasal sounds and for the production of plosives. But this time what we need to understand is, while nasal and stop consonants involve a complete blockage of the vocal tract. Now that is the most significant part of this slide, that when we are going to make a distinction in between nasal stops and fricatives, remember, while we are producing nasal sound or stops, what happens? There is a complete blockage of the vocal tract before the release of the airflow. But so far as the fricative sound are concerned, my dear students, remember, fricative sounds involve only a partial blockage of the vocal tract, so that air has to be forced through a narrow channel. So that means airflow needs some sort of narrow channel to pass on, to get out of the mouth somewhere. We have got two cavities, oral cavity and nasal cavity. Nasal cavity is not allowed except three sounds, m, n, ing. But that means the oral cavity. But we need what? A narrow channel. And the statement says again, for example, you create t stop consonant when you block airflow completely with your tongue against the alveolar ridge, isn't it? T. But if you let up with the tongue a bit and let the air seep through, you make an S, I mean sir, but here S fricative consonant. Sir. 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 Narrow channel is required, and we have got a narrow channel when we produce the sound sir. Sir. There is no complete blockage. Can you feel it? Absolutely not. So sir sound, in fact, what you can see the sign of S, in fact, but is sir sound. This is fricative consonant, but it needs a narrow channel for the airflow. So there is no blockage at all so far as the production of sir is concerned. Okay? For example's sake, I told you something about sir sound. Exactly is the sign S, of course. But now, the list of fricative that is very much in front of you. We should try to understand this list, all right? So let's start. The first sound, the fricative, is f. The words which are helping us are fro and calf. Air is forced to the upper teeth and lower lip. Of course, the class is like labiodental. F, fro, calf. Now what is happening in fact? What is the manner of articulation? Air is forced through the upper teeth and lower lip. F, f. So we were trying to understand the narrow channel. That means when we talk about the narrow channel for the airflow, that doesn't mean there is a blockage, a complete blockage. We don't feel any sort of complete blockage when we talk about fricatives. And we can, through this demonstration, understand, oh yes, there is no blockage at all. No complete blockage at all. The way we experienced when we were speaking or producing murna ing, at the same time some stops. This time when I'm producing fur, you can feel, if you just follow me and say fur, you can feel the same thing, that air is forced through the upper teeth and lower lip. Fur. Labiodental. And that is the same thing which happens to ver sound. Ver, wine, have. Air is forced to the upper teeth and lower lip. Again, this is a labiodental sound. Ver. Please don't mix this sound with were. Were is produced with rounded lips. But this ver is not produced like that. That is upper teeth and lower lip. We are trying to understand the manner of articulation. So air is forced through the upper teeth and lower lip. So this is what we have to understand when we call them fricatives. The next is th. Thick. Bath. I told you, I think so, during the previous session, sometimes what happens in the light of my experience, some students try to write some Urdu sort of things to understand these sounds. Please don't do that. We have te, he, the. No, but please don't. You don't have to learn English of course, phonetics and English phonology like that. That is the wrong way. My suggestion to you people is that please never ever try to do that. Try to learn phonetics and phonology directly. So the sound is th, thick, bath. So what's happening in fact? Air is forced through upper teeth and tongue. Air is forced through upper teeth and tongue. It is a dental sound. And again the next, the and rather, the and rather, the. So air is also forced through upper teeth and tongue. In the case of the air is forced through upper teeth and tongue. The next one is sir. The words which can help us understand this sound are suit, bus. Suit, you can feel air is forced to tongue and alveolar ridge. Suit, bus, suit, bus. Further, the next sound with us is in the fricative category, z. Z. As in zit and jazz. Watch, air is forced through tongue and alveolar ridge. That is also called alveolar sound. The next sound is z. Zit, jazz. Zebra or zebra, zero. Air is forced through tongue and alveolar ridge. Our next sound is sh. Sh. The words which can help us are short, brush. Now, try to feel air is forced to the tongue and point just beyond the alveolar ridge. Sure, sure, short, brush. The next sound is j. J. The words which assist us to understand this sound are vision, measure, vision, measure. Most of the time, I have seen many people pronouncing these words as vian, maya. So that is the sound, at least that is quite strange sound to me. I have never heard any native speaker using this sound, vian, maya. So this is vision and measure, vision, vision, measure. Okay? So understand it. Air is forced to the tongue and point just beyond alveolar ridge. Je, je, vision, measure. Yes, yes. The next fricative sound is h. H. Actually, it isn't fricative, but it is considered to be fricative. Try to pronounce these words: happy, happy, hope, hope, hope. So that's why it's technically not even a real consonant sound, since there is no obstruction of airflow. Sometimes the phoneticians believe, and there is no obstruction, and we understand that the difference between consonant and vowel is that when we produce some consonant, of course, there is a construction so far as the consonants are concerned. But anyway, it is also included sometimes as one of the fricatives, but it is not actually fricative sound. Okay? Let's try to understand the fricatives through this demonstration. This is what I've been telling you while producing many sounds which are fricative English consonants. You can see. Now this is what happens inside us when we are producing fricative sounds, right? So exactly, the oral cavity is very much active, and of course the speech organs, different speech organs are playing their role to produce fricative sounds. Can you understand now? Alright, that's pretty good that you can see the air flow where it is going. Of course, that is the oral cavity. At this time you can see that the nasal cavity is absolutely not busy. Absolutely not busy. As I told you time and again, that the nasal cavity definitely, and mostly, let me tell you that it happens to the British English speakers. Mostly it does not happen to the people who are prone to speak American English, because I have heard somebody saying, or some of the people believe, that American speakers, they are very much inclined to use nasal cavity while using these consonants. Anyways, but we can see that this what happens in British English. I'm talking about that because we have got only 3 nasal sounds. It is possible I'm wrong, but mostly what happens, generally speaking, that I have heard some professors saying that American English speakers, of course, they are inclined to use nasal cavity most of the time, so not necessarily English. But remember, principally speaking, it may be not true statement, but we have to understand that we are left with three nasal sounds, which are m, n, and ing. And most of the time you can see that this is the oral cavity that is very much busy, and the speech organs which are assisting, right? You can see soft palate, and of course tongue is playing the major role. That is the most active articulator. Of course, at the same time we have lips. I'm not saying that the other speech organs are not contributing, but remember, tongue is playing the active role. So you can see that this is how the fricative sounds are produced, and that is what the true demonstration of the airflow. Okay. Now let's try to understand the affricate sounds. When stop consonants mix with fricative consonants, the result is an affricate consonant. When stop consonants mix with fricative consonants, the result is an affricate consonant. So the mixture of what? Plosives, stops and fricatives. So with the mixture of this, what happens? The result is an affricate consonant. Remember, affricate consonants start as stop sounds with air building up behind an articulator, which then releases through a narrow channel as a fricative instead of a clean burst as stops do. So this is the mixture you can understand. I repeat, an affricate consonant or affricate consonants start as stop sounds with air building up behind an articulator. What happens this? Right? What happens when air is built, when the pressure is built? Yes, exactly, in the stops, which then releases through a narrow channel. But remember, in stops we don't have the narrow channel. The absolute blockage of airflow is there. So that's why over here it's the mixture of stops and fricative consonants. Yes, exactly. So affricate consonants start as stop sound with air building up behind an articulator, which then releases through a narrow channel as fricative, instead of clean burst as stops do. So there is a narrow channel required over here. That's a mixture of stops and what? Fricative. Yes, exactly, fricative. Let's try to understand the African sounds or affricate English consonants, which are how many? 2. Absolutely right. Now, the first sound or English consonant, that is affricate English consonant, is ch. Ch. Chick. Match. Not only these 2 words, but you can use as many words containing the sound ch. Ch. Church. Lunch. Catch. Itch. Okay? Lunch. What is happening in fact when you produce ch sound? Air is blocked with tongue just beyond the alveolar ridge, then released as fricative. There is no stop sign of thing, right? But there is a mixture of stop and what? Fricative. This is what we are trying to understand. Affricate, yes. And affricate is made how? With the blend of stop and fricative sound. Ch. The sounds are ch and j. But first we are talking about ch. The words which are helping us to understand these sounds are chick and match. Air is blocked with tongue just beyond the alveolar ridge, then released as a fricative. This is what happens when we produce the sound j. J, as in jam, badge, judge, justice, jury, judge. You can use many words and you can understand air is blocked with tongue just beyond the alveolar ridge, then released as a fricative. Alright, so these 2 sounds, ch and j. Ch and j. Once again, my regular request that please don't try to understand these consonants, of course, if I talk about English consonants and vowels, by comparing them with your own language. What happens then? You will not be able to understand English directly. I want you to learn whatever it is. You may take time. You may take time as much as you need. But remember, think directly. So the sounds, affricate sounds are ch and j. Ch and j. Good. The next category of the class is, according to the manner of articulation, so far as the consonants of English are concerned, is approximants. Remember, approximants are when two articulators come close together, but not quite close enough to create air turbulence. This is a very simple statement that is quite easier to store in your mind, that approximants are the consonants, approximants, which are known as, they are what? They are when two articulators come close together. Articulators do come close, but not quite close enough. They do come close, but not quite close enough to create air turbulence. This is very important. The articulators, whatever they are, when they just work together, they come closer, but they don't come so close to create air turbulence while producing approximant. Okay? Now let's try to understand what are the approximants. Remember, generally believed that there are three English approximants. And let's try to understand them. What are they? The first one is were. Were. Rounded lips. Were. Wet. Harvard. Wet. Harvard. Now what happens when we produce were sound? Back of tongue raises to vellum and lips are rounded. This is what I was telling you before. Back of tongue raises to vellum, but not too close. But not too close. And lips are rounded. Were. Well done. Welcome. Please do not try to mix this sound with v. No, it's not v. Labiodental. Do you remember? V, f, v. So this is were. You have to round your lips when you are producing were sound. So what happens when we are producing this sound? Back of tongue raises to vellum, but not too close. And lips are rounded. And what happens when we produce v sound? The upper teeth are on the lower lip. So that is a big difference between v and were. This time, I hope that you are quite capable to understand whenever I'm using either v sound or were sound, maybe in the connected speech. And I'm sure that whenever I make a mistake, you can just mark it. All right, the instructor is in fact mixing were with v. Were and v. Were and v. It's quite easy, because what happens, the auditory phonetics in fact helps you to determine whether the sound produced with the rounding of the lips or by touching the upper teeth on the lower lip is quite natural. So this is what the smart move of the student when he or she is capable of understanding now that, all right, this is the were sound and this is the v sound. Maybe that is spoken, that is used in the connected speech. Maybe some speaker is very fast, but what happens when the speaker is speaking and you are alive to the situation? You know the concept behind this. You have read about manner of articulation and of course the place of articulation. You understand. No, it is were or v. And that is a vowel sound. The next sound is y. Please don't mix it with j. No, it is not j. It is y. Yes. Okay. Bayo. Boy. No. Y. Yes. Your. Yesterday. Yummy. Right? So what happens when we produce this sound? Tongue raises to hard palate, but not too close. But not too close. The tongue is raised to hard palate. Alveolar ridge. Alveolar ridge. Alveolar ridge. but not too close. And same happens what to r sound. R, that is again an approximant. R, right. Roar. Again tongue raises to hard palate, but not too close. Okay? And this sound is known as post-alveolar, or you can call it alveolar. That one is plateau, but this one is alveolar. R, right, roar. Tongue raises to hard palate. Good. Yes, hard palate, hard palate. And this is how we produce approximant r and y, r and y, r and y. You can understand, of course, the hard palate. You understood the use of hard palate, of course, tongue is doing what? But remember, there is a difference. While we produce r, what is the position of the tongue? And when we use y, yes, you, yesterday, yo, yummy, whatever. These are the, so r and y. And we have to extend our courtesy to our manual published in 2001. So this is what the approximants of English. Of course, y is there. I've already told you that you have to round your lips, but this is r and y. My dear students, the last sound of this category or these categories, of course, when you're talking about consonants of English with reference to manner of articulation, is lateral. Lateral consonant is when the tongue blocks the middle of your mouth so that air has to pass around the sides. That's very important to understand, that air does pass, but it passes around the sides of your tongue. There is only one lateral consonant in English. There is only one lateral consonant in English, and that is L. You can pronounce the word luck, and you can understand that air is passing, but it is passing around the side of your tongue. Okay? And you have to place the tip of the tongue at the alveolar ridge. Place the tip of the tongue at the alveolar ridge and say L. Now air is passing, but from where? Around the sides of your tongue. Around the sides of your tongue. And that is the only English consonant, lateral. There is only one. L, L, luck, lion, long. Okay? Good. Well, my dear students, today we have talked about the classification of English consonants with reference to manner of articulation. We try to understand what are the classes of all the consonants of English, and I hope that the examples which I provided in the slides are not sufficient, but you can just pick up some more examples and you can produce certain sounds. But the most important thing is that you need to practice. Of course, you can write first of all on a piece of page, and at the same time then you have to demonstrate, you have to pronounce the words containing one particular consonant sound, and then please, my suggestion is that you have to record your voice. It's very good practice. I always favor this one, and time and again during every session, I think so. I just make a request to all my students that the most important activity you can do after listening to this demonstration or maybe other demonstrations is that you have to record your voice, since particularly I'm talking about phonetics and phonology, because by the end of this course what you need to do, because that's my expectation, I hope that I set an objective for me that my students of course shall be saying I love phonetics, and it is only possible that we start practicing and we do activities during the session and after the session. So for this session, the self-assessment component is that please classify English consonants in detail with reference to the manner of articulation. This is what we have done today. We tried to understand all English consonants by giving certain examples, and of course I tried my level best to pronounce the words and the sounds which are in those words. And at the same time I requested you that you have to do the same practice. So after this session from my side, thank you very much. Goodbye and good luck. Stay blessed.